Have you ever spent a Christmas where every breath your loved ones took felt like a priceless gift? 3 years ago, we were standing on the thin line between life and death, spending Christmas in total despair in the ICU. But tonight, at Peace Farm, a completely different script is being written. What did James secretly do to make the whole farm glow like the Milky Way? Why does little Nye's $0 backpack hold the power to change an entire future? Don't scroll past, because what you're about to see isn't just a typical Christmas party. It's a symphony of rebirth, where broken hearts are mended by the light of the purest kind of love. Step into the most magical 20 minutes of our lives, where real miracles begin with the simplest things. If you also believe that there's a rainbow after every storm and that love can create miracles, please show your support for Nye's family by hitting the like button on this video. And don't forget to subscribe right now and turn on notifications so you don't miss any part of our inspiring journey. Christmas 2025. In the countryside isn't about long lines of people under bright neon lights or loud music from shopping malls. Christmas at Peace Farm begins with a biting chill sweeping across the fields and the scent of pine resin drifting through the cracks of our wooden house. James woke up at 4:00 a.m. He quietly slipped out of bed, making sure to pull the wool blanket up for Diep and adjusting Knee's sleeping position. The little girl was clutching her old teddy bear, smiling as if she were dreaming of gummy bears. Today is a special day. It's not just Christmas. It's the 3-year anniversary of the day they left the hospital to start a new life. James decided to give the two most important women in his life a surprise he's been secretly working on for the past 2 months. For the last 2 months, James would often disappear into the small workshop behind the chicken coop in the evenings. He told Diep he was just fixing some storage shelves, but in reality, he was working on a deeply emotional technical project. James started his morning in the garden. Instead of harvesting vegetables like usual, he gathered fallen pine branches and lush mistletoe. He didn't want a plastic tree. He wanted a real tree of life. He chose a young pine growing in the corner of the garden and decorated it not with crystal ornaments, but with fragrant dried orange slices, rustic cinnamon sticks tied with twine, and most importantly, small wooden tags. On each tag, James carefully wrote the name of every child patient who had come here to heal. He wanted the spirit of sharing to warm the entire farm tonight. By 8:00 a.m., Diep woke up to the smell of toasted bread and the rich aroma of coffee. She walked down to the kitchen and was stunned to see the table set like a small banquet, complete with a red tablecloth and green pine sprigs. "Merry Christmas, honey." James appeared, wearing an apron covered in flour, but sporting a radiant smile. Nye ran down too, her fine hair a mess, shouting, "Daddy, did Santa come to our house yet?" James scooped her up in his arms and planted a kiss on her rosy cheeks. Santa's busy delivering gifts to the kids at the hospital right now, but he left a treasure map for you and Mommy to follow right here on our farm. The first surprise James had for Nye was a wooden wagon with wheels that he'd built by hand, lined with cozy sheepskin rugs. James pulled Nye all over the farm, stopping at different stations where he'd hidden small gifts. A small box filled with eggs painted like cute little snowmen, a wicker basket overflowing with the ripest strawberries, along with a brand new red beanie that Grandma Loy had knitted and sent over. A new photo album documenting the past year's journey of all the children who had visited the farm. But the biggest surprise for Diep was still to come. In the afternoon, as the golden sunlight began to dip behind the mountains, James led Diep to the hill behind the farm, a spot that had been sitting empty and uncultivated. Diep stood there, completely stunned. Before her eyes was a greenhouse of dreams. It was a small structure built entirely from recycled wooden frames and old glass panes that James had meticulously collected. Inside, there were no vegetables. Instead, it was a dedicated space for her to read and paint. There was an old armchair, reupholstered in floral fabric, a brand new easel, and a bookshelf filled with the art books Diep had once given up on to focus on caring for their daughter. Diep, James said, taking his wife's hands, which had grown rough from the wind and hard work. For the past 3 years, you've been a mother, a doctor to our daughter, and a farmer. Today, I want you to just be Diep again, the girl who loves to paint and sit quietly in the rain. This is your corner, where neither the storms of life nor the chores of the farm can reach you. Diep was choked up, unable to find the words. She never imagined James could be so thoughtful, recognizing her deepest hidden longing amidst all their daily struggles. As darkness fell, Peace Farm began to glow with solar-powered string lights. There was no big crowd, just the family of 3 and Grandma Loy, who had caught a bus from the city just in time. The dinner menu was made entirely from the farm's own harvest. Herb roasted chicken with fragrant rosemary, microgreen salad tossed with olive oil and wild forest honey, hot pumpkin soup served with dark rye bread. In the middle of dinner, James surprised everyone by pulling out an old projector. He projected short clips onto the wooden wall of the house that he had secretly filmed over the past year. Nye waddling after the chickens, Diep nodding off on the porch with her notebook and emotional thank you messages from the families of the sick children who had stayed with them. Grandma Loy wiped away her tears. Seeing you all like this, I know every bit of hardship we went through was worth it. When Nye started to drift off to sleep after a long day of fun, James led Diep out to the middle of the yard. He hit a remote, and suddenly from the branches of the old trees, thousands of tiny fairy lights dropped down like a rain of light. James picked up his guitar and started strumming the notes to Silent Night. But he wasn't singing alone. Out from the shadows of the dirt road, the local villagers, and even Nam and his wife, the family of little Bon, stepped out, each holding a flickering candle. They hadn't come for a party. They had come to sing for James's family. Their voices blended in the stillness, echoing off the mountainside and creating a sense of peace that felt almost sacred. Thank you to the Peace Farm family for showing us what Christmas is really about. Nam said, his voice trembling slightly. It's not about expensive gifts. It's about being there for each other as long as we're still breathing. Late that night, after everyone had left the farm, returned to its natural tranquility, James and Diep sat by the dying fire, watching the glowing embers. Nye was fast asleep in her room, a red stocking hanging at the head of her bed, filled with roasted chestnuts, a gift from Santa James. Diep leaned her head on her husband's shoulder. The warmth from the fire and his chest made her feel like her life was finally complete. "James," she whispered, "do you have a wish for the new year?" James looked into the fire, then up at the stars sparkling over the mountain peaks. "I don't wish for anything more for myself. I only wish for enough health to keep this garden green so that every Christmas we can hang more branches of life on our tree. I want this place to be a home where anyone in despair can find a small fire to keep them warm." They sat there together under the Christmas sky of 2025. A day without snow or reindeer, but a day of rebirth. James realized that the greatest surprise wasn't the greenhouse or the gifts. It was the fact that they had survived the storm together to stand here peaceful and in love. Their happiness was no longer a luxury. It lived in the scent of the earth, in their daughter's heartbeat, and in their intertwined hands on a cold winter night. As the night grew late at Peace Farm, and the songs under the stars faded into memories, Nee fell asleep in Grandma Loy's arms. James gently carried her to her small room, which smelled of fresh pine. But for James and Diep, their work as Santa's helpers was just beginning. Once the two of them were alone under the warm yellow lights, Diep sighed softly, looking at Nee's tiny feet peeking out from under the blanket. James' Nee turned 6 next year. Thinking about her leaving the farm and our protection to go to elementary school in town, it scares me. She was so fragile once. Will she be confident enough to stand tall among her peers? James didn't answer right away. He opened a drawer and pulled out a large box carefully wrapped in craft paper and tied with a rustic twine bow. That's why Santa has to give her this gift tonight. We can't keep her on the farm forever, but we can give her a mobile fortress to take with her. On Christmas morning, as the first rays of sun pierced through the heavy suburban mist, Nee was woken up by the tinkling of the wind chimes outside her window. Out of habit, she immediately looked at the foot of her bed. Something strange was shimmering in the early light. Nee rubbed her eyes and let out a tiny cheer. "Daddy, Mommy, Santa really came." It wasn't a doll or a typical toy set. Sitting in front of Nee was a very special backpack. The bag was made of natural fiber in a forest green color, Nye's favorite color from around the farm. But what truly amazed her were the tiny details sewn onto it. On the flap of the backpack, Diep had used her skilled hands to embroider a picture of 3 people: a man leading a child, a woman holding a flower, and in the middle, a little girl skipping along. It was their family. In a small side pocket, there was a zippered compartment embroidered with the word brave. Inside, James had placed a small pebble from the stream behind their house, polished perfectly smooth. James had once told Nee, "Whenever you feel scared, in a crowd, just touch this stone. It carries the warmth of the earth and the strength I'm sending you from home." There was also a round wooden pin featuring a lily of the valley, the symbol of Nye's return to health and her rebirth after those long days in the hospital. James walked into the room, feigning surprise. "Whoa, that's a huge gift. Let's see what Santa's letter to Nye says." He unfurled a small scroll of paper and read in a warm, deep voice. "To my warrior Nye of Peace Farm, I know how brave you've been in winning your battles against pain. Next year, you'll start a new journey called school. It's a place where you'll find new friends, fresh books and new challenges. I'm giving you this bag, not just for your schoolwork, but to carry your dreams. Every time you put it on, remember that you never walk alone. Daddy, Mommy, and the entire farm are walking right there with you every step of the way. Ly clutched the backpack to her chest. The hesitation usually seen in her eyes was gone, replaced by a sparkling sense of joy and pride. She insisted on putting it on immediately, even though she was still in her bare pajamas. To help Ly get used to her gift and the idea of school, James turned the yard into a pretend classroom. He used chalk to write on the flat stones, "Peace Farm Classroom." Grandma Loy played the teacher sitting on the porch to welcome her student. James and Diep played her classmates. Ly, wearing her brand new backpack, marched confidently down the trail lined with wildflowers. "Good morning, teacher. My name is Ly, and I'm from the Green Farm." Her voice rang out bright and clear, breaking the morning silence. Watching her from a distance, James felt an overwhelming surge of emotion. He realized this gift wasn't just for Ly. It was a way for him and Diep to heal their own fears. They were learning how to let go so she could grow. When Ly curiously opened the largest compartment of the bag, she found a set of school supplies made entirely of wood pencils that smelled like cedar, and a ruler engraved with her height measurements from every month she'd spent at the farm. And the most special item was a small tin mailbox. "What's this for, Daddy?" Ly asked. Diep sat down beside her and explained, "Every day, when you come home from school, if there's something happy or sad you haven't had a chance to say yet, just write it down or draw it on a piece of paper and put it in this box in your bag. At night, we'll open it together. It's our family's secret mailbox." That mailbox was the bridge James and Diep wanted to build, ensuring that no matter how far Ly went, her bond with home would remain unbreakable. At lunch that day, the family sat under the old long-gone tree. Ly refused to let the backpack out of her sight. She even picked some dried sunflowers and tucked them into a pocket to bring the scent of home with her. James looked at Diep and squeezed her hand. "See, our girl is stronger than we think. The backpack is just an object. What she's really carrying is the love we've spent the last 3 years building." Diep smiled, leaning her head on his shoulder. She understood that this year's Christmas gift wasn't just about getting ready for first grade. It was a promise that the hardest part of their journey was over. It was time for Ly to soar on the wings of her own confidence. As the Christmas sunset faded, the farm lights began to twinkle once more. Ly sat on the porch steps, flipping through the first few blank pages of the notebooks in her new bag. She drew a large circle and surrounded it with trees. "What are you drawing, sweetie?" James asked. "I'm drawing my school daddy, and I'm going to bring our fresh veggies and eggs to share with all my new friends." James let out a hearty laugh and swung Ly up into the air. Christmas 2025 drew to a close with a promise a bright future was waiting for the little angel of Peace Farm. No matter what storms might rage outside, Ly would always know she had a green fortress to return to and a backpack full of love to carry her through. As the clock struck 6:00 p.m. on December 24th, Peace Farm felt like it had drifted into a dreamland. The sounds of farm work and the clucking of hungry chickens faded away, replaced only by the winter wind rustling through the old long-gone trees and the faint sound of church bells drifting in from town. James held Diep's hand, while Ly, wearing her new backpack, skipped ahead of them. They walked toward the center of the yard for the Christmas Eve celebration James had spent weeks meticulously planning. In the middle of the yard, James had built a large pyramid-shaped bonfire. As he lit the first flame, the fire roared to life, lighting up their beaming faces. The warm orange glow danced in Ly's wide eyes and brought a flush to Diep's cheeks in the Biakertini. Sur kier feitoi semethar, sur kier avtau chill. James brought out a large cast iron pot and set it on a tripod over the fire. Tonight's dinner, he announced, with the confidence of a head chef, is happiness soup. Diep laughed. I've never heard of that one. What's the secret ingredient? James stirred the pot and explained to Ly, this soup is made from the potatoes you picked yourself, the corn I grew, and the herbs Mommy gathered. It tastes like the earth, the sun, and the warmth of this fire. Anyone who eats it will be happy all year long. The aroma of heavy cream butter and fresh vegetables began to fill the air, mixing with the crackle of burning wood. They sat on fur rugs spread around the fire. Grandma Ly brought out a plate of gingerbread shaped like little houses and farm animals. The family huddled together, sipping the hot soup in the middle of the vast open space. The winter cold didn't stand a chance against the warmth of the earth in their hearts. After their simple but cozy dinner, James pulled out a small wooden box filled with colored paper and wooden pencils. Every year we receive gifts. James said, "This year I want us to do something different. Everyone write down one thing you want to give to someone else in the family for the coming year." Ly worked hard on her drawing. Since she couldn't write much yet, she drew a giant circle filled with hearts. "I'm giving Mommy and Daddy lots of health so you never have to go to the hospital again," she said proudly as she dropped her paper into the box. Diep wrote in her elegant handwriting, "I give you peace of mind. Next year, I want you to worry less about the farm so we can spend more afternoons just sitting together, watching the clouds go by." Thought James sat in silence for a long moment before writing. "I give Diep and Ly a promise. No matter how much the world out there changes, I will always be the one to keep the fire burning in this home." Together, they hung their wishes on the tree of life in the center of the yard. The shimmering LED lights made the slips of paper look like butterflies perched on the branches, waiting to take flight into the future. As the night deepened, James pulled out his old guitar. Instead of upbeat Christmas carols, he played a slow, soulful melody. It was the song he had played for Diep when they first fell in love, and the same tune he used to whistle softly by Ly's hospital bed to soothe her to sleep. Grandma Ly closed her eyes, sipping her hot ginger tea and nodding gently to the rhythm. Ly rested her head on her mother's lap, watching the red embers drift up into the pitch-black night sky. "Mommy," Ly whispered, "can Santa see our fire?" Diep stroked her hair, her voice tender. "Santa doesn't just see the fire, sweetie. He sees our love shining like a little star right here on earth." Suddenly, James stopped playing. He stood up and led Diep and Ly to the edge of the hill where they could look out over the entire valley. "Look," James pointed into the distance. From the healing cottages, where the other sick children and their families stayed, star-shaped lanterns began to light up one by one. The families staying at the farm had secretly coordinated with James to pull off this surprise. Dozens of little stars twinkled in the dark, creating a man-made Milky Way right on the ground. It was a silent thank you from those who had been touched by the family's kindness. In that moment, the line between the giver and the receiver vanished, leaving only the deep connection between people sharing the same journey. As the clock struck midnight, the official start of Christmas Day, James pulled Diep and Ly into a tight embrace. 3 years ago, James said softly, his voice trembling with emotion, we spent Christmas surrounded by the smell of antiseptic and the beeping of ICU monitors. That night I prayed for only one thing for Ly to live. He looked into his daughter's bright eyes and at his wife's peaceful smile. Tonight, I'm not asking for anything. Tonight I'm saying thank you. Thank you that we are all still here. Thank you that Peace Farm gave us a second chance to realize that happiness isn't a destination. It's the journey we take together. They stood in silence under the glow of the full Christmas moon. A cold wind blew past, but no one felt the chill. Ly pressed her cheek against her father's calloused hands, feeling the strength of her fortress. Diep leaned her head on James's shoulder, finally feeling the peace she had always dreamed of. Finally, as the bonfire faded into glowing embers, James carried Ly, who was now fast asleep, back into the house. He tucked her into bed under a warm quilt. Beside her lay her new backpack, ready for the next chapter of her life. James and Diep stood by the window looking out at the garden. The moonlight draped over the lush vegetable patches, the quiet wooden cabins, and the wishing tree. Merry Christmas, honey. Merry Christmas, my partner in everything. They shared a gentle kiss, bringing a close to their most special Christmas, yet a day where love had been tested by hardship, only to emerge stronger than ever. Tested by pain, nourished by Mother Earth, and finally blooming into an everlasting peace. Tomorrow morning, when the sun rises, Ly will wake up with the excitement of a student-to-be. James will head back to the garden to harvest vegetables. Diep will start her first brushstrokes in the greenhouse. But the echoes of this Christmas Eve will linger forever, like a golden thread woven through their lives, reminding them that as long as they have each other, every day is a miracle. After the guests and villagers had headed home, leaving the yard, quiet except for the crackle of dying embers, James led Diep and Ly toward the back of the farm. There stood a small hill, James called Vista Hill. Tonight, December 24th, 2025, the sky was crystal clear. The stars sparkled like diamonds scattered across the black velvet of the universe. James sat down on the grass and pulled a rusty tin box from his coat pocket. Diep looked at him surprised. She had never seen it before. "What's this, honey?" she asked softly. James opened the lid. Inside were dozens of small, crumpled, and faded scraps of paper. "These are the prayers I wrote during those 7 days Ly was in the hospital. Every time I felt like I was about to break, I'd write a line in here and hide it away. I almost threw it out. But tonight, I wanted us to read them together." Ly leaned in curious. James read 1. Day 3. Ly still has a high fever. Baby girl, if you just wake up, I promise I'll take you strawberry picking every single day. The next one. Day 5. The money is gone, but we can't lose heart, praying for a miracle so our family can just have a meal together again. As he read, tears streamed down Diep's face. But they weren't tears of sorrow. They were tears of relief. You see, James said, squeezing her hand, "We did it. We did all of it. Today we don't just pick strawberries. We have a whole farm. We don't just eat together. We help other families put food on their tables too." Then James pulled out the next surprise for the family. It was a handcrafted wooden hourglass, but instead of ordinary sand, it was filled with shimmering gold and green grains. The sand is crushed from the seashells Nee picked on her first beach trip after being discharged, and the green is from dried seeds from our farm, James explained. He set the hourglass on a stone pedestal. This is to remind us that time is our most precious gift. From now on, no matter how busy we get, every time this glass runs out, about 20 minutes, we put down our phones, leave the garden work behind, and just sit and listen to each other. These will be our 20 minutes of peace every day. Ly giggled as she flipped the hourglass, watching the sparkling grains flow down. To a child who had crossed the line between life and death, 20 minutes of her parents' undivided attention was heaven. Just as the family was heading inside, they heard a noise at the farm gate. A tall figure in a dark cloak was standing there. Ly hid behind her father, a little frightened, but as the figure stepped into the firelight, the whole family gasped in joy. It was Dr. Min, the man who had saved Nyi's life all those years ago. He didn't come empty-handed. He brought a small Christmas tree decorated with old stethoscopes and empty medicine boxes painted in vibrant colors. "I couldn't miss Christmas Eve at Peace Farm," Dr. Min said with a kind smile. "I brought a little something for Ly to get her ready for school." He pulled out a toy stethoscope that looked remarkably realistic. "Ly, the backpack your dad gave you is for your books, but this stethoscope is so you can listen to your friends' hearts. School isn't just about learning your ABCs. It's about learning how to care. If someone is sad, use this to listen to what's on their mind. Okay?" Ly happily looped the stethoscope around her neck, looking every bit like a brave little doctor. That night, the doctor who saves lives and the family whose lives were saved sat together, sipping spicy corn wine and talking about the miracles of medicine and the even greater miracles of human kindness. James stood up, glancing toward the new wooden structure currently under construction. He took a deep breath and announced his biggest project for 2026. "Diep, Dr. Min, this farm shouldn't just be a place for those who have been sick. I want to build a green library right here. And Hai will go to school in town, but in the afternoons, she can invite her friends back here to read in the middle of the strawberry patches. I want the children in this area to grow up with the scent of books and the earth, not just phone screens." Diep looked at her husband with immense pride. Her James was no longer the man who only cared about dry business plans. He had become a creator of happiness. As the last few grains of sand trickled through the hourglass, signaling the end of a perfect Christmas day, James carried Ly to bed. She gripped his hand, mumbling sleepily, "Daddy, I love you, and Mommy and Dr. Min. And I love my new backpack too." James kissed her forehead silently, thankful that her breathing was so steady and strong tonight. He walked back to the living room to find Diep untangling some mistletoe. He hugged her from behind, warmth spreading through the wooden house. "This Christmas was wonderful, wasn't it?" Diep whispered. "Yeah," he replied, "because we're not running away from the pain anymore. We've turned it into something new." Outside, the frost began to settle, but inside Peace Farm, the fire hadn't gone out. It continued to smolder, keeping the seedlings in the soil warm, the chickens in the coop cozy, and the hearts once shattered, but now mended by pure love full. Christmas 2025 drew to a close, opening the door to a new journey. The journey of a 6-year-old girl ready to shoulder a backpack filled with the essence of the earth and the love of her parents, stepping out into the world.